And we always look at our own bodies as a chemistry lab, and we are the scientists trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And we're always doing our N of one experiments.
Zora Benhamou, I am so happy to have you on the Staying Ageless podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you about so many things that I've listened to your podcast, and I'm excited to share a bit more.
Awesome. Thanks for listening. So, the first thing I have to ask is, I was like, wow, a gerontologist. Like, I want to talk to someone. I want to talk to you about this. Obviously, this is the Staying Ageless podcast. I'm very interested in, first of all, what led you to gerontology? Kind of give us an idea of like how you got to the journey that you've been on to helping women also to menopause, but also specifically, I'm very curious about this gerontologist situation.
I'm so glad you're excited about that.
Yeah.
Most people don't even know what it is, and I have to explain what is a gerontologist, what is gerontology, and I seem to choose these professions that nobody knows about or have heard of or a clue on. And one is gerontology, and the other is biohacking. So to explain gerontology, it's the study of aging and longevity, and this is not only looking at things from a biological perspective in terms of how our body ages and why we get certain diseases, and advocating for older adults, and it's true, but we also look at the sociological aspect and the psychological aspect to aging. So it's not just, eat this, your body ages faster, slower, done. Like, it's so much more than that. It's so complex. And so I was into the biohacking community before I did the master's in gerontology. And so I was just always interested in just how can we age a little slower, not make it go so fast, and age better. And so it was really that biohacking background of mine led me towards gerontology, because there is no masters of biohacking. It's a new thing, and it's an old thing with a new name. And the gerontology really brought the science as well as the credibility, and for me to understand really how to bridge the gap between gerontology and biohacking. And now I use that for women going through this menopause transition, these two hats. But I was just always interested in how to age slower.
Yeah, super cool. I want to hear what your take is or what your approach was to biohacking, just because I feel like, I'm sorry. I feel like all of the men that I follow or know of that are doing biohacking, for me, I'm like, you're doing too much for me. I'm going to age slow. I know what I need to do. But I don't know. Sometimes the gadgets and the things feel so overwhelming, at least, for some of the people that I observe. And also sometimes, because I had grandmothers who lived to over 100, and sometimes I'm like, they were just chilling in the village, eating really great food and not having stress. So I really don't, do I need a machine? I don't know. I want a female perspective to approaching biohacking, basically.
Yeah, let me explain what biohacking is. And you're so right. It's an industry that's been dominated by men. And now the women are coming into this picture, because we realize that all the things that we've learned for the guys are not necessarily always working for the girls. And the idea of what people see about biohackers, and if you've heard of Brian Johnson, he made headlines about spending $2 million on making his body age, 25 again. And you don't need to spend $2 million, and you don't need all these gadgets, and you don't need all this stuff. But that's the image that people are having. And of course,
Yeah.
yes, we like gadgets because we like data. We like to test, measure, and assess. And that's the difference between, say, a health enthusiast and a biohacker, is because we want data, not only to understand what we're feeling, because and then some people don't feel anything. You ask them, how do you feel when you eat rice? They're like, I don't know. Or how do you feel? Like, I don't know. But then if you have a gadget, sometimes that can help them. Oh yeah, my blood sugar is spiking. And I was kind of tired after that. And it helps them a little bit. So we do kind of like the gadgets, but biohacking, just to break down the word, bio is biology, hacking is finding a shortcut or a way or an offset, or try to create some kind of change in our internal environment, our chemistry. And we always look at our own bodies as a chemistry lab, and we are the scientists trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And we're always doing our N of one experiments. And N of one just means you're one in this experiment, because usually studies would say, oh, we have N of 1,000 or N of 1,000,000, how many people are in this study, so we can make these conclusions. And a biohacker really likes the studies and loves the research, but we understand that the only person that's important in this room is you. That doesn't matter what the study says. If it doesn't work with you, well, it doesn't work. Or if it does, then great. So when you're coming to biohacking, I look at my definition of it is really it's looking at it like a pyramid. So the base of the pyramid is all the things that we know that we need to do in terms of our nutrition, our exercise, our stress management, our sleep, our community, our purpose, our society. All of this is really important. We get this down. And then the middle tier of biohacking would be those things that you don't really need a doctor for, which is maybe some supplements or an ice bath or red light therapy. And then the top tier is something you would need a doctor for, which would be platelet-rich plasma injections, peptides, or regenerative medicine, something, you need another hack. And what people tend to do or think about biohackers is that middle and top tier. And what's the supplement I can take? And what's the injection I can do to just get better? And in fact, those things, at least in my experience, don't work so well or at all if we don't have that foundation. So I always teach my clients, get that foundation first, and maybe you don't even need that stuff. But I also have those clients who really do the foundation. They're just like still struggling. They need a little crutch, a little help to get along the way. And that's when those extra biohacks are really, really helpful. So I really hope that this has cleared a little bit of that stigma, that stereotype of a biohacker, because it isn't about the gadgets and it isn't only about the gadgets and the injections and supplements and all that. That's just kind of a little add-on. And we really, do the things that you're doing, that you're talking about, that's the foundation. That's the most important part.
Yeah, yeah. And that ties really well in with the conversation I just had with a regenerative medicine doctor who literally was like, we now focus on the foundation and then add on stuff. Like, I'm not even going to give you any, you know what I mean? I'm not going to give you any injections or anything until I deal with your A1C and I deal with your sleep. And I was like, see, now this all makes sense, because I feel like everyone is kind of coming to the same page where they realize you can do all the fancy stuff, but you still need the baseline stuff. And, if you just do the baseline stuff, you actually might be okay for some people. You actually might be all right.
Yes.
Depending on your genes and other things, whatever.
Yeah. And you're right. It does seem overwhelming at the beginning, but it's kind of like when you first started studying nutrition and you were overwhelmed. There's macronutrients and micronutrients and the Krebs cycle and how do it's just like a lot. But when you get into it and the more you read, the more you study, the more you practice, it's just another language that you have, and it's not so overwhelming, and you break it down and you then figure out what is it that I need really for me or for my clients or to help your dad or whoever.
Yeah. So let's talk about menopause and perimenopause, child. So how did you get into, I mean, obviously you had your own experience, but what led you to now then take your experiences and focus in on that as well?
So I've been in this biohacking track and working with clients, and I created a podcast 3 years ago, and I've been always giving information related to the biohacking track, but for women, really for women and for older women, because I also realized in this community that the younger women have different needs and interests. They want to have their cycles great. They want to have babies. They want to, and we're past that when we get to menopause. We don't want any of that anymore. And we are more focused on our gray hair or wrinkles or something like that. And they're very different needs. And then the hacks also need to be a little bit adjusted as well. So I really focused on that. And then my community was really asking for information on hormones, on menopause.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really them who demanded this. And that's why I started to get more experts in this field to talk about this. And then anyone who was on my podcast or brought into my community was like, okay, you got to, whatever it is that you know, whether it's stem cells or whether it's some other gadget, you got to talk to a woman going through this perimenopause transition into menopause, because that's what we target and that's what we focus on, because the general stuff may or may not apply. And so yeah, that's how I got into it. And then of course I was going through it myself, and I am in perimenopause now. I'm 53, and I'm in that perimenopause phase. So I'm thinking, well, this is maybe when I was 50, I I was thinking, yeah, maybe I should really get into like learn about this, because I'm probably going to go through it. And what I didn't realize it is that I was already starting on that journey like 5, 10 years before. And I had no clue, really
Yeah.
no clue, because there was no talk about it, no information. And in my head, I was like, when I was in my 40s, I was thinking, yeah, this is something I'll worry about when I'm 50. And
Right.
and that's what I want to help women to understand is, please, like, you got to understand what your hormones are doing and what perimenopause is, and understand that it can even happen in your 30s, and it's not that unusual. So, but I could talk on forever, but I'm going to stop right here because I'm really, really excited about sharing information and what I didn't know, and helping women just to be more aware.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people don't know, is that they don't know that perimenopause starts literally a decade, or even, I don't even know. Genetics are very strange because, some people, based on what their mother had menopause, it's identical. Some people it's not. Like I see some clients who, because I've been lucky to see like entire families because people are like, here, come see my mom, come see my cousin. They send me everybody. So it's so funny to see a mother who had no menopausal symptoms at all, who was living her best life because she was in the islands. And then her daughter is like already having hot flashes at 40 something. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
like, but I think that happened more because of lifestyle differences. But can you break down some of the things that happen in perimenopause that may be confusing for people, where they don't even know that that's perimenopause?
Yes. Can I define first what is
Yeah.
menopause and perimenopause and some of these
Yes.
different stages? Because there may be someone listening who really has no idea. I met so many
Yes.
women. I do these 1 minute reels that I share on Instagram and Facebook, where I interview women all around the world. I literally stop them in the street and say, "Hey, will you answer 5 questions about menopause?" And and I realize, whether it's in Thailand or Hong Kong or Spain or US, like, there's a lot of confusion. They're all confused. And so, to explain what menopause is, and we use this term, you may hear the menopause space, and what is that? And we often are talking about perimenopause and menopause and even postmenopause, and they're very different stages. So
Mhm.
menopause is really just a 1 day event. It's when you have 12 consecutive months without your period. And
Mhm.
that's it. That's menopause. Like, if you want to get real technical. And it's a stupid thing to mark, because it's really the transition. It's the perimenopause phase that really is one of the hardest parts, and you really want to be aware. And perimenopause happens generally around 5 years on average. Can be just a year, and it can be up to 10 years. Okay. So the average is, let's say the average age of menopause is 51 in North America. It's 48 in India. It could be different in many different countries, but in North America, it's 51. So about 46, you're going to start feeling some of you will or will not. I hate to, I want to make a stereotype. You may have some perimenopausal symptoms, but even if you don't have these symptoms, it doesn't mean that you're not going through menopause or you're not having a change. If you look under the hood, you will see the bones may be getting more brittle. The hormones are starting to be depleted. The muscle mass is starting to go away. Like there's just the insulin resistance may be starting, and you don't know or see or feel these things yet, but they're happening even without the symptoms. So it's actually a good thing to have the symptoms because at least you know what's going on. You're at least become aware. And so I always tell women, once you hit 40, I want you to really pay attention to what you hear about menopause and perimenopause. And what you hear, always be a little skeptical, always question, and then see if it applies to you or maybe not applies to you. Because one, is it misinformation? Is it true? Does it apply to you? Even if it's true, maybe it doesn't apply to you. And also, the science is evolving and changing. We are literally in the Wild West right now when it comes to certain treatments of menopause. And I think in 10 years down the line, we're going to have a lot more clarity. But right now, it's like that. So there's the perimenopause, which is let's say mid 40s until about 50. And then there's after 50, after you hit that date, it's called post-menopause, but we really rarely use that word, but it's post-menopause. And then if you were to get into menopause, if that 12 consecutive months happens before the age of, in between 40 and 45, that's just called early menopause. Okay. It's early onset menopause. And then before that, it's under 40, then it's real, like it's more rare, but not completely unusual to have your period stop and say 38 or 39. But then you're really probably starting to feel the symptoms in your mid 30s.
So as a gerontologist, do you consider menopause a indicator, the stage or the time in which menopause happens for a woman, an indicator of how fast she's aging?
No, we don't have enough data yet for that. We can't make these conclusions that if you have early menopause, you're going to die earlier. We don't know. And right now, what we do know, no, it's not the case. And right now we don't, unfortunately, as you know, most studies in the past have been done on men, and there's just not as much in robust studies done on women. Now they're happening because now it's obligatory, but let alone we still have little and even less on a woman going through menopause because we didn't want to go take the women in the first place because we have periods and we have babies now and menopause. And now it's just for a researcher, it's very expensive to do research. And then when you have to make these co-founding factors for these women who are fluctuating and have to take their hormones, I mean, it's just too expensive and too hard. So, but they have to get over it.
We're a bit more complex because of the various hormonal stages someone can go through. Like, so I just find that fascinating though, because I tell people that like I literally turned 30 like a year ago and I felt it. It was so weird. I literally was like, my body stayed in the stage of being 20 something for well over a decade. So I was like, this is so fascinating how I could feel it like when it changed, because all of the things that my clients were experiencing when they're 30 did not happen to me until like literally like a year ago. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on?
Well, with something really interesting to keep in mind is when it comes to our hormones, and I just want women to get familiar with the words progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. Those are just the basic sex hormones that you're going to hear a lot. And there's so many other hormones you're going to talk about, but I want you to get really familiar with those. And I know you know those, but a lot of women who do not understand that. So we have estrogen, progesterone are the two ones that talked about the most, and they go into balance with each other. When progesterone is up, estrogen tends to go down and vice versa. It's like a little seesaw. But in your mid 30s is when you have a very steep, precipitous, and fast decline of progesterone. And that throws everything else off balance. And that's mid 30s. In your 40s, once you hit 40, then estrogen takes a decline, but it's more gradual than progesterone. Sometimes it feels like you're falling off a cliff too, but it's very nobody really knows about that. So when you're in your 30s, you are not thinking about menopause at all, and you're not thinking about your hormones, and you're not worried about that. But I want women to be aware, if you are feeling anxious, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling a little weepy, you're feeling a little bit stressed out, then you may want to test your progesterone levels and see where they're at, because the progesterone hormone is the calming hormone. It's the relaxing hormone. It's your best buddy. And you're going to be real sad when she's gone.
Right. Yes. Yes, for sure. For sure. How do you feel about bioidentical hormones, and when, or like based on your research, like when do you feel like is an optimal time to start using those if someone was going to use them?
Well, if you were in your mid 30s feeling all those symptoms and you tested your progesterone and you're low, that's a good time to start bioidentical progesterone
Mm,
and at least test it. Okay. Because maybe it's your diet, or maybe it's you just got divorced, or maybe you lost a parent. Like, of course, all these things it's normal to be sad and weepy and stressed and depressed. But
mhm.
sometimes you may notice you're not handling it as you used to. And
Right.
and progesterone may be a good time. And of course, you talk to a doctor who's versed in this. But progesterone is a thing that you can buy over the counter. It's not the other hormones where you really need a prescription.
Mhm.
And you can buy this online from, say, a doctor or a good website. Not, I wouldn't go on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon, but I really wouldn't. um, but it's quite a safe thing to do an experiment with. But again, talk to your doctor, because obviously you may have some other underlying condition I have no idea about. And but it is something to really take in consideration. Very simple to do. And even I know people who give progesterone to their 20-year-old daughters because they've tested them and they see that they're quite low and they're having all these symptoms, and they go, let's just top up. It's just topping up a little bit of progesterone. Doesn't mean like you've lost all your progesterone, but you
Right.
probably want to top up. So I'm a big fan of bioidentical hormones. I'm a big fan of hormones in general. I love hormones. I wish I had them back. I wish I had them, but when you're 20s, in your 30s, you're full of it. And
That's
you're
what.
really sad when they go away, because all of these issues, all these problems that women have, they start when we're losing our hormones, right? And women, why do women have more osteoporosis? Why do we get more dementia than men? There's all these questions floating around, and it all happens to be right when we start losing our hormones. And if you ever take one of these biological aging test kits, which again, it's sort of a little biohack for you. People love to test their ages and things, and there's a lot of different ones out there. But you'll see generally what they're showing in the research is that when women are tested for biological age versus men, we're actually up until menopause, we're doing really good. We're actually young. Our age, our biological age is younger than our actual age. But
Yeah.
then when we hit menopause, it takes a steep decline, and we're suddenly older than we are, biologically older than our chronological age. And then there's other studies showing then that woman goes on bioidentical hormones and she goes right back up.
Right,
And
right, right, right.
that's a really interesting thing to find. So yeah, no, I just did a very interesting course. I'd mentioned to you that it's called the Institute of Bioidentical Medicine. They have a course called the Menopause Method, and it's a training for doctors so that they know how to treat their patients. And they allowed me to take the course. So I had some very interesting insight into how doctors need to approach the patients, what they need to know about them. And then I'm able to help my clients or my community advocate for them, and give them the right tools and questions to bring to their doctors so that they know they feel good, they feel safe. Because the biggest fear that women have for the last 2 decades is hormones cause cancer, or they're worried, we got such a bad hormones got such a bad rap from a
They got
bad
a bad
study.
rap. Yeah. But
Yeah.
it was only like one study that just got pimped out too much. or a couple studies that got pimped out too much. There's a lot of really good research too that is like, hey, calm down, everybody. The hormones.
That's the new stuff. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
with the Women's Health Initiative in 2002, and it was unfortunately it wasn't even published, and word got out that they had to stop the study because some women were getting cancer, and then all the headlines could understand was hormones cause cancer, and nobody ever waited for the actual official announcement, which said, "Oh, actually, no, there is very little or no risk at all." But that didn't make the headlines. And for 2 decades, women were hormones were ripped out of their hands like candy from a baby, and they were suffering for a long time. And then 17 years later, they went back to these women in this study, and they actually found out how protective the hormones were.
Yeah.
So and then there were a lot of holes in this study, like the average age was 62, and most women who are considering bioidentical hormones are in their 40s and 50s, and
Yeah.
it was a big mess, and it needs to be, all this stuff needs to be repaired. And now it looks like the pendulum is swinging the other way, where I was like, whoa, is it protective? Really? Well, maybe, again, you're all bio individual, and that's why you have to talk to your doctor about the risks and the benefits. And I always say, talk to your doctor if you're interested in hormone therapy, have them explain it to you, discuss your individual risks and benefits of taking it, as well as the risks and the benefits if you don't take it.
Right. And I'll add a caveat because one of my, one of my key menopause clients was a surgeon. The doctor came to me and I had to convince her to take hormones, and she felt so incredible afterwards.
Uh-huh.
And so if you just have to find someone who's qualified, who knows what is going on, and who can at least look at hormone testing for you, encourage you to like try stuff that you're scared to do. Because I find that a lot of doctors don't know about it,
Mhm.
or at least not in depth, and they can't really explain it in a way that also doesn't leave people scared. So she was, I think, frightened about, the headlines too, like, leads to cancer. So she just refused to take it. And I was like, no, 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 no. Like, it's gonna change your life.
Yeah, we have to think of hormones not bad. I mean, if somebody has diabetes, insulin's a hormone. Are you going to say, no, 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 you should do this natural and die early?
Exactly.
No, I mean, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do it
Exactly.
for people who need any kind of hormone. So why would you do it for a woman who's lost her hormones and really feeling bad?
Yeah.
And and so that story's got to change a little bit, and people need to read. And I really want women to educate themselves, not just hearing this on a podcast. Go and read Estrogen Matters by Dr. Avram Blooming. You can go read, there's so many books out there. Read the research, and also keep in mind, you can find all the research that shows how great menopause medicine is, or hormones are. And then you will also find a lot of studies that say how it's not good. So you got to learn how to read these studies too, and ask the question, is this study done with bioidentical hormones? Is this done with the synthetic stuff? Is this done with a large group, a small group? It's a lot of work, but you got to go through it yet to really be convinced. And if you are not convinced that it's good for you or safe, or for some reason, then don't take this, okay?
Yeah.
Because you're
Sure.
what you're putting in your head counts. and
Sure.
uh and I
Sure.
don't, yeah. So I just really want women to educate themselves, and not just, hear their friend did it and it's great, because women can be taking the hormone therapy and feel worse. And it's mostly due because the doctors are not really sure what they're doing. Like you said,
Yeah.
their
We've
doctors
heard
are
that.
not trained in menopause medicine. It's,
Yeah.
as I've heard, anywhere from 0 to 8 hours of training in menopause
Yeah.
in different doctors programs, and
Yeah.
in or medical school is what I'm talking about. And when you think about how many years, if not a decade, of studying that these doctors have to do, and that's all they get, it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not enough. And it's a very it's an art to be able to treat a woman with hormone therapy because we absorb it differently, we react differently. You can't just give this one standard dose for every woman, and you got to deal with them, and you have to come back, have them come back every month for a couple of months until they get it right, and you teach them how to titrate themselves according to what they're feeling. And it's complex, and I can understand why doctors don't even want to go there because it's too
Right.
much work and too too expensive to get the training and too much of my time. But they have to because we're 50% of the population, a little bit more. So like we need to deal with these women. And if you're lucky enough to go through menopause and get to that age, then you're going to need that help. So really, you've got to find a doctor who is trained in this and be 100% sure and secure. You feel safe yourself that your doctor knows what they're doing. And if you don't know where to go and how to find that, I've got all the resources on my website.
Sure, sure, cool. Let's wrap it up with just a question about there's a lot of body changes that happens as our hormones change as well. And I think a lot of women, a lot of clients that I deal with, they're always struggling with trying not to do or trying to do the same things that they were doing at a certain age and then realizing, hey, like that's not going to work. And, I have to like break it down and try to get them refocused, not on weight loss, but on muscle mass, all the things. And sometimes it takes a really huge mental adjustment. Um, can you talk about what you have discovered on your own journey working with women as well, and what you feel is optimal as far as like body goals? Because everyone wants to look great. It doesn't matter how old they are.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's an anxiety that creeps up too with the changes that happen, not just because of the hormones, but also because of what's happening to your body at the same time.
Yeah. So there's what's happening to your body in terms of the looks, and then there's what's happening to your body in terms of you're losing your strength, or you're losing your hearing, you're losing your eyesight, you're losing your hair. Like all of this is really stressful. And so no wonder, yeah, women are struggling. And on top of it, we've got this ideal, we have to be on this ideal that we see in social media, and always be beautiful and perfect. And why is it that men can have gray hair and wrinkles and it's not that bad, but for women, oh my gosh, it's so much worse. And that's a real pressure on a woman.
Mm.
And so then we become in this position where we really would try anything or spend as much money as we need to try to hold up to that standard. So it's really hard to change that mindset. I mean, it really, as much as you try and I try to say, let's focus on strength and power, this is something as a gerontologist is so important, right? We need to, when you see somebody in their 70s or 80s who are not able to go up a flight of stairs, who cannot carry their groceries, who cannot open a jar, you get worried. Like, how is this person going to age at home? They want to age at home in place, and how are they going to take care of themselves? And so we can't really imagine. It's hard for us to imagine ourselves as a 70 or an 80-year-old, but we will get there if we're lucky, and we want to be there strong. But we're still so preoccupied with just looking good in our clothes and being attractive. And as much as you try to change that shift, it's at least with the women I've been working with, is even if they say it, they try to convince, it's still in the back of their head.
Yeah,
I still want to fit into my clothes, or I still want to look good. And so I don't want to, it's like, it's, I want to dismiss that and poo-poo it. It's important. It is there, whether you like it or you not. But trying to shift and say, okay, let's make the goal not weight loss, not fat loss. We want to build muscle and strength, and we want to be strong. It really softens things a lot, and I think you're doing great with that. And I'm trying as much as I can as well to bring that goal. Let's just be goal, because you will hit those goals when you
you
try to
will.
strength train, and whether or not you've lost the weight, you will get some kind of a win, and that's already something.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the more muscle mass you have, you feel stronger, and you start to be less insulin resistant. You're more insulin sensitive, so then you can really eat eat more like you'd like to eat. And a lot of good things come out of that, not just looking good in your clothes anymore. So shifting the focus is important, but I have to admit, it's always in the back of a woman's head, at least the woman's
Yeah.
I've been working with.
Very interesting. Because to me, like, I feel like women always do better when we can somehow kind of feel our way into feeling better. And I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but it's kind of like instead of being like, I gotta get back into my size for, you know what I mean? It's like, I just want to feel great today. What makes you feel great? I feel stronger now, or I feel, and I do think that there is one of the things, because you were talking about the psychology of aging, and one of the things that I think that helps, at least when I talk to people who are over 100 or whatever, they seem to be living their best life, they tend to have a very optimistic mindset. And they also tend to kind of be like, what will be, in a sense. It's kind of like just getting to a place. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to settle for not being my best. It's just that maybe I shouldn't compare myself to who I was in last season. You know, it's like,
Yes.
maybe I need to like now set a new bar for myself that feels good, that feels empowering, that doesn't feel like I'm trying to live into the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as we age, we chill out a little bit on that. And I think for a woman going through this menopause transition, whether you're in your 40s and 50s, you're in a transition. Transitions are hard. Transitions are very hard. And we realize that, okay, we're not young anymore. We're not like 25 anymore, 30. We get it. We start to see those signs of aging, but we're not old yet either. So you're in this in between, and that's why you're hanging on so hard to your youth, because you feel like it's sucking you there, but that's why it's so hard, because you're
Mhm.
just not here, not there. You're in this midlife, right?
Right.
So it's and that's why you struggle so hard with it. And then once you get past that, at least as my observations, it's like, okay, whatever. It is what it is.
Right.
And it's easier to accept, and then have that mindset that you're talking about is all those small wins, and you feel really good, and you're not comparing yourself to your 20-year-old self, because you go, well, I wouldn't want to be 20 in a lot of ways.
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to be a strong 60-year-old or a strong 70-year-old or whatever it is. I mean, I'm really about aging strongly, not so much aging gracefully. Okay. I prefer, let's just be strong, because I
Mhm.
want to be independent. And most older adults that I speak with, they want to be living independently, doing things independently, not be a burden on their family.
Yeah,
And the only way to do that is to keep your health and stay strong
I agree.
mentally and physically.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Where can people find you, Zora?
Hackmyage.com. This is a little bit of biohacking there. And on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm all over the place. And you can always find me on YouTube. But the hackmyage.com website is where you're going to find a lot of free resources, where how to find a menopause doctor, and in your area, and this is globally, not just in North America. And yeah, what to expect. And I got programs out there, free stuff and group stuff. It's all very affordable, and it's just want women to be empowered through this transition.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. This has been amazing.
Thank you.